Hello everyone, it's Jamarl Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. I hope everyone is okay this evening. I can't sleep. I'm up, so let's do the news. Because real men can't sleep. Real men do the news. But while I check the sound, if you guys enjoy what I put down and you find yourself coming back here often, please feel free to support the content. You can do that by sharing the videos, liking. And of course, you can always support through Patreon, and at this point, I'm monetized, so Super Chat or Streamlabs. For the moment, I want you to think of yourself in historical context, and meaning if somebody was looking back at us, meaning how we live, how we acted, the things that we did great, the things that we did not so great. They can never actually peer into what it feels like to be here, like the logic at work. Yeah, they can understand it from the standpoint of this kind of intellectual way, but not necessarily in a flesh-to-bone way, in the way in which we live our society. For the moment, using that particular context of how we are now and how people will see us, I want you to look back at history, and I want you to think of it in the same way, meaning a living thing. Something where people live and operate and function, and there's a logic to it. At the very least, a logic in the way they understand the world. I'm trying to make this thing of getting you to feel what it feels like to be in another context or in another time period. Back in 1917, Balfour wrote a document that is plaguing us to this very day, 100 years later. The Balfour document, it bears his name, or Balfour Declaration, plagues us. At the end of the Second World War, the Ottoman Empire was essentially belonged to Britain. Britain was a fragile empire at that point, but it was an empire nonetheless, and it had its maximum reach all across the world. Well, one of those countries, or you can say empires, was the Ottoman Empire that essentially picked the wrong team and was broken up. This was after they committed atrocities in the standpoint of the Armenians, so don't necessarily feel all that bad for them. But one of the things that is biting us in the ass is essentially that declaration. Britain was promising things to multiple sides because Britain was in danger of losing the First World War. And in promising things to multiple sides, one of those sides were Arabs, and another one of those sides were the Jewish community. The declaration essentially gives Palestinian territory to Jews. And in fact, to be precise, on November 2nd, 1917, Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour writes an important letter to Britain's most illustrious Jewish community or citizen, Baron Lionel Walter Rothschild, expressing the British government's support for a Jewish homeland in Palestine. The letter would eventually be known as the Balfour Declaration. Supporting somebody's homeland in somebody else's homeland. This was to some degree moderated because you can imagine that the Arab community wouldn't necessarily like to be ruled by foreign powers, but also may take issue with other people essentially taking their land or eventually occupying their land. At the end of the Second World War, you can imagine this kicked into overdrive, and here we have what we have today. Israel passes a nation-state law. Now, this is pretty amazing, seeing as this is a nation-state on somebody else's land. That's land that doesn't belong to you, that you are continually to expropriate. The wild part about this is, I look at this stuff in a cynical way, meaning if they have no reason to not take that land, then they will take that land. If that makes sense. the United States is pretending, or has pretended for God knows how long, to be both a partner to Israel, one of its closest allies, this another special relationship if you want to call it, but simultaneously supposedly interested in having some kind of deal to bring an end to the conflict. Now, this is not a religious conflict, meaning this is not a conflict that has gone back for billions of years. Jews and Arabs have lived in that part of the world for a very long time. This is a conflict about land, and it is a conflict from the standpoint of land. One side with nuclear weapons and support from $1 trillion military, taking land from very poor people where the rest of the world looks and wags their fingers and wrings their hands, but don't necessarily do anything about it. This is about land, not religion. The argument may be used in the context of religion, just like the civil rights movement was used through this kind of lens of religion. But ultimately, what we're talking about is one side living in squalor, and the other side, you can say, being the reason for that squalor. You're taking somebody else's land. And having an atrocity committed upon you does not necessarily give carte blanche reason or justification to commit an atrocity to somebody else. They pass a nation-state law. We are a Jewish state. Now, forget the fact that you're on somebody else's land, and forget the fact that even in the context of the laws and the lands that you've created yourself by which you're stealing other people's land, but even under the context of your own legal system, legal system, there are over 1 million people who are not Jews living in that particular territory. By definition, this is a racist apartheid state. This law just clarified it. In protest of this, Palestinians have called for a general strike. Palestinians across the occupied West Bank, Gaza, and eastern Jerusalem held a general strike on Monday in support of a protest launched by the 1949 Palestinian against Israel's new Jewish state law. Passed in July, the nation's state law declares that only Jews have the right to self-determination and downgrades Arabic from its status as an official state language. The legislation has come under fierce criticism domestically and abroad. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has defended the law, saying it is necessary in order to fend off Palestinian challenges of Israel's Jewish self-determination. That's amazing. That's amazing. The only person here, or the only country here, that's doing anything with regards to destroying self-determination of another is Israel itself. Continuously screaming that somebody's trying to destroy Israel while continuously destroying another country. It's amazing. Or at the very least, not allowing something to be a country or state. Across the Palestinian Authority territories on Monday, schools, universities, government offices, and shops were closed in solidarity with the Palestinians and the 1949 territories who shut down the shops and the companies. It is the minimum we can do for our people against the racist law, says Abdul Jabir al-Iraqi, a citizen of the town Tebeh in 1949 territory. They identify as Palestinians and make up 1/5 of Israel's 9 million people. The reason why I made the point that history is a living thing is because if you were living around during the time when the Native Americans were being wiped out, colonization, if there were television cameras during that time, if there was media, if there were certain governments that were aligned with other governments, what would it look like? Meaning, if you were in a government that was aligned with a government that was doing that particular extermination, what would it look like? Would you see it on the media? What would be the language that we use to describe that particular thing that's happening? What you know of as the destruction and the killing and the genocide of the Native American population. I am making the point that this is colonization in real time. You are watching it in real time. It is difficult to call it colonization because you weren't around during the time where much of the colonization was taking place. But if you were, I put to you that it would look like this. You have one government aligned with another government, and because they're in alignment, one doesn't necessarily bring that up. The media doesn't even necessarily bring that up. I would be hard-pressed to believe that this story was covered in mainstream media today at all in the United States. It will go silent, and you will not see anything of it. In real terms, you have one group that is brutalizing another group. They've just murdered a 12-year-old, for God's sake. They've been shooting people in mass, protesting, people who are pissed off that their homeland is being stolen, pissed off at the squalor and the conditions that they are kept in, pissed off that they're kept in an open-air ghetto. Israel is doing these things, not because they're Jewish, but because they're trying to take somebody else's land. Anybody that would be a colonizing force would have to do similar things. The only difference is, again, this is in real time. We are around during this time. There are television cameras, and the people who are being colonized can actually raise a hand, raise a fist, blow shit up, and say, hey, we don't want to be colonized. And blow shit up, I just mean setting fires. They're protesting in solidarity in general strike. Will this change anything? No. Does it make a statement? Yes. And it makes enough of a statement while I'm covering the story. So, good on you. Good on you. All right. I'm not going to keep this one long. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. And you can always support through Patreon. Martian villager Bernie is a soft Zionist. Not a soft Zionist. You know, one last point. This idea of being able to return to homeland, meaning, you know, you can have a Jew in Michigan go to Israel and claim somebody else's land. That's amazing. Meaning some random person that has never been born or wasn't born in that territory has claimed to land over somebody that was born in that territory. This stuff is nonsense. This stuff is nonsense. I say America halts all aid to Israel immediately. I say that as a Trump supporter. I think all people that have Israeli citizenship should move to Israel. All Jews have Israeli citizenship. I don't think all Jews should move to Israel because it's not their land. Like, it's not their land. I agree with you that all aid and funding should halt to Israel. Yes, agreed. They're out there murdering people. Yes, yes. They've just murdered a 12-year-old. Yes. Halt military aid. Why on earth would you aid somebody who's stealing and expropriating land that doesn't belong to them? So that's first point. No, I don't want any random person in bumfuck Louisiana wasn't born there, has no connection to there, to move there. I don't want them supplementing, taking somebody else's territory. But yes, that's a racist law, and they have an open-air ghetto. And if you want to have any real level degree of negotiation where you want to have Israel actually make a deal or want to make a deal or incentivize them to make a deal, yeah, stop military aid. Stop all aid. So I'll end this here. But Palestinians are marching. Solidarity. Reuters covered the story. Good on Reuters. This one point. Right here. Only Jews have the right to self-determination in Israel. That's amazing. That's amazing. If you want to know why these people are protesting, that line tells it all. Only Jews have the right of self-determination in Israel. We have the right to self-determination on somebody else's territory. If you wanted to know what colonization looked like back then, here you go. Here you go. Miss Tree, shortly prior to the doctrine you speak of, literally months prior, the United States agreed to protect the Palestinian people and their land. You know, the wild part about this, Britain, to some degree, at least based on the stuff I was reading, and to be honest, that could be a biased view of things, the incrementation wasn't immediate. Like, it was like 1%, 2%. Like, it was small increments. But yeah, they broke their word. They broke their word. Here we go. Cloud illusion. Jamal, have you learned your lesson? I have no idea what you're talking about. Never ignore me because I am white. I have no idea what you're talking about. No, I ignored you because you were being an asshole, if that makes sense. It has nothing to do with you being white. Never cross me. You mean you get removed again? Is that what you're talking about? You're my lesson in removing you? I have no idea what that means. It's wildly inhumane. Yeah, Clyde, you're being a prick. You've been a prick, dude. We broke our word then. We broke our word a few times. We broke our word a few times. Yeah, it's amazing history when you look back at it. And I'm going to be magnificently fair. And if I was born in Israel, I may act and think just like any other Israeli that's there. Why do I think that? Because they act the way they act. And I think humans, for the most part, are robots. I think we get programmed with certain behavior. And not just programmed with certain behavior, this idea of tribalism or self-preservation. Just like whites here in the United States, many would say, look, I wasn't born back then, so I'm not responsible for that stuff. Don't blame me and tar me for that. And to some degree that's true, but to some degree that's false, especially if you are still benefiting from the fruits of what took place. I say the same thing with the Israeli thing. You may have somebody who was born into a particular situation who say, I didn't have anything to do with that, and yet I feel I'm under attack because of where I live. I get that perspective. Fair enough. But that perspective cannot supplant the perspective of the global community looking at this, saying that you are doing bad things. And in pursuit of doing bad things, you're doing this under this idea that you could steal somebody else's land. That's a fail. Whether that's through the BDS movement, whether that's through... There was sustained effort on South Africa as an apartheid state. I suggest that the same tools be applied to Israel. I understand the Israeli position from the standpoint of we live here and we don't want something that may take us away. There's a certain level of self-preservation built into it that I can respect and I can accept and acknowledge. But the problem is that's somebody else's land. And I would prefer that there a deal be made where something is figured out, whether it's a single state solution or what. But there is no way to come up with a solution if the side that is supposedly dealing with the negotiations has it in the bag for one of the parties that is in the negotiation. It's nonsense. Who the hell would end up with a deal in those situations in their terms? Both of us are trying to negotiate something, and I have it in good with the person who's doing it. They're supposed to be the middleman and the referee. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. There's no incentive. There's no incentive. Uh-oh, I wish Siler would call in. Siler's here. I'm going to marry a Jewish girl in New York and grab some Arab Israeli land. I wish I could just grab some brown person's land on the Jersey Shore, but Israel will have to do. That is fucked up, right? That is fucked up. This is so fucked up. I'm going to marry a Jewish girl and steal somebody else's land. That's so fucked up. Man. And again, I want to make this very clear point. This has nothing to do with them being Jews. This has everything to do with them occupying somebody else's land. Anybody that was occupying somebody else's land would have to behave in similar ways in order to preserve the fact that they're taking somebody else's land. I mean, for fuck's sake. I'm going to end this here. I may have other videos, especially if I can't sleep. And Clyde, I'm sorry for having to kick you out, man. Honestly, dude, if ever you want to say anything, just say it. Just say it. Don't have to be a prick. I try to have a rule where all of us can say whatever we want to say to one another. It's just how you say it. And I think I am magnificently fair and open in allowing people to talk and have their say. Jamal, take a look at the comment in another video. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Just look at how we Americans act if you want to see settler colonialism in action. Yeah, really. You know, I think part of the reason that we have a special relationship with Israel is because, to be honest, we did something similar. I mean, Americans came here, slowly expanded, and started to colonize to the West, killing and taking and creating a legal structure that made the fact that they were killing and taking okay. I defy you to see how the Israeli thing is all that different. Yes, it's taken a different look because it's in a different part of the world, but for all intents and purposes, those things are very similar and the same. Those things are the same. Alright, I'm going to end this. Alright guys, if you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support the Patreon. Thanks all. Glad to have you back to sanity. Bye.